Anyway, so I'm here to talk about Getaboutable.com, which is a website that I've created to share information about inclusive and accessible activities and services around the world. It was really interesting. I've heard Jordan speak many times. I've never heard that story about you guys going to the UK. And interestingly, the dream for this is probably about, so I should say Getaboutable is only 9 months old, so I hope in 9 months I'll where you are now, Jordan. But the dream for this is more than 10 years old. And it started out with a friend of mine and I, both of whom were disabled, but had been friends long before we were disabled, saying there's got to be a better way. We were both big travelers, and as we became more disabled, saying, you know, there's got to be a better way. And in fact, the next big step in that thinking was when I was in the UK about 5 years ago, and there's a service there called Shop Mobility, which is very badly named because it's not just about shopping. But in most town centers, there are wheelchairs and scooters for hire. Usually, back then it was £1 an hour, so very reasonable prices. And I ended up spending several months in the UK basically seeing all sorts of places between trains and Shop Mobility. I was out there, I was touristing, yeah, it was great. And saving, you know, the days that I thought I was going to spend the whole time there for my husband's work reading, I only did that on rainy days, which admittedly in England is every other day, but anyway. Okay, so getting on to talk about Getaboutable. So as I said, the idea for this came from my love of travel. I've been a lifelong traveler, and getting out there and experiencing new things about my local community and the world is a really big deal for me. If I can't do that, that's where quality of life comes in. But of course, that's not easy with somebody with accessibility needs. And whether that be mobility, hearing, or vision impairments, there is services out there, there are facilities and activities out there that are not necessarily directed towards people with hearing impairments, or people with vision impairments, or people with mobility impairments, but that are in fact inclusive. And there are people who have the right attitude to be inclusive. And if I don't talk about it, remind me to tell you the story about the gliding pilot. So what are the extra things that we need to think about? Well, they're basically what most people don't have to actually think about. They take for granted. So how am I going to get to and from an activity? If I'm in a wheelchair, will my wheelchair fit in the vehicle? If I'm not in my local community, you know, are there wheelchair accessible taxis? If I'm, you know, deaf mute, can I get my destination across to a taxi driver without them thinking of me as an imbecile? And that brings me to the last point. Whatever we're doing, we want to be included. We want to be wanted. We want understanding and compassion to us and our companions. And we don't want to feel like we're a charity case or a burden. So, you know, as Jordan said, in this day and age, there's technology out there, there's Google. How can we get the information we need, or even just get ideas on what's possible? And that's something that for me, running and building this website has been incredible. I mean, I thought I was pretty much out there in terms of inclusive travel. Some of the things I've discovered that are possible, it's just amazing. And my bucket list is building by the day. In fact, we're going to start a bucket list tab on Getaboutable just to deal with everybody's dreams. Okay, so this is how Getaboutable.com was born. As I said, we're 9 months old. We launched at the end of November last year. It was a very soft launch, as they say in the business. Still building, still working out all the bugs. I'm very glad to hear anybody's feedback. But the key points are that there are multiple search functions. You can search by map, keyword, the type of assistance you need, or the type of activity. And like higher up, it's user-driven content. It's built so that the users are supplying the information, both in terms of new listings as well as reviews. of those listings. So that's just a photo of the top of the screenshot of the top of the homepage, so you know what to expect. So sorry, I didn't talk about here. Sorry, the tabs: experience the world, share your experience, enhance listings, sponsor, and contact us. So there will be a bucket list tab shortly. The experience the world is the search function. The share your experience is where you nominate listings and review listings. I will talk very briefly here, but nowhere else, about enhanced listings. So if you are a service provider or a business that you believe is inclusive, you can nominate to list here, and in fact, you can advertise your business through Getaboutable. So that's what the enhanced listings is all about. So please do contact me or look up on the website to figure out how to do that. And then sponsorship, I'm not looking to make a profit with this business, but it does need to be sustainable. And so if anybody out there is willing to sponsor or support, even with small dollars, it all adds up. Crowdfunding, just as much as crowdsourcing of information, will keep this website going. Okay, so the search tab. Under Experience the World, as I said, you have the map, and I've done here a global view of the map. Each one of those little flags is a listing. You'll notice that Southeastern Australia is very rich in listings. If you zoom in, it's a Google Maps based interface, so just normal Google Maps, zoom in, zoom out. You know, you can move the map around to find the location that you want. The weight on Southeastern Australia is only because, as I said, it's a new website. Most of my networks are in Southeastern Australia. I am living here in Canberra. I've got family in Sydney and Melbourne as well. Most of the listings right now are Sydney, Canberra, Melbourne, but certainly very keen to expand those networks. So please tell your networks about Getaboutable and get people to nominate listings, and that's how we'll make the whole map turn blue. Then you've got the type of assistance needed. Those are drop-down menus, types of listings, so accommodation, transport, equipment hire, water sports, adrenaline sports, you know, you name it, we've got a category for it. Or a country, say, I'm traveling to France, and I want to see what's available in France. You can search for all the listings in France. And then keyword, I want an accessible pool. You can put in the keyword pool. So you've done your search. This is two examples of listings on Getaboutable. So Jubilee Sailing Trust, my super excited, new bucket list item. You may have heard on the news, the tall ship Endeavour. So this is an accessible tall ship designed to be fully accessible and sailed by crew of all abilities. And so it's just moved down to Melbourne, and I've got a sail booked in September. So that's my next adventure for... I very often get asked, oh, what's your next adventure? And I've been stumped until I found this one. So it's now my big excitement. And then the greenhouse in Busselton is an example of a company that contacted me and listed their accommodation venue on the website. So aspects of the listings, so you've got the title, the location, detailed contact listings, a link to their website, and a map, so you can again zoom in and out of that map and get right down to the street level of where to find them, and then a description. So very often if it's a business driven listing, that listing will be provided and very articulate, and I'll show you later on with the nominations that we ask for the nominator's email address, not to be published, but so that I can ask questions, when we get the listing for approval to be published, and very often, it'll say accessible bathroom. It's like, well, what kind of accessible bathroom? So we generally ask people to flush that out. Okay, so sharing experiences, as I said, you've got a drop-down menu with nominated listing, and it's actually instructions on how to review a listing, and I'll explain why later. We also are very active on social media, and so we can have users join as a membership, and the idea is to have a regular newsletter go out with new listings and other exciting news. But certainly very active on Facebook and Twitter. You can also follow us on Instagram if somebody is big on Instagram and can teach me how it works. My 13-year-old niece got me on Instagram, and she lives in Melbourne, so I'll be going to visit her in September when I go on the Endeavour, asking her to give me course number 2 on how to get Instagram to work. And my 10-year-old son has got me on YouTube, and there are videos coming soon about some of the activities and some of the listings. Yeah, it's amazing what the new generation can do. Right, so nominating a listing. So you'll remember under Share Your Experience, it was instructions on how to nominate a listing. Under Share Your Experience, it is the drop-down menu of nominated listing, and this is the screen that comes up. It's very important that I stress, if you're just at a venue and you're like, this is so cool, I want to share this, or you happen to find a walking track that doesn't have even those single steps. You know those inclines that have like 1 step every 2 meters? Why? But when you find the ones that don't have those steps, please load them up and share your experience with the world. But you're not going to know every detail, and you're certainly not going to want to type out a description. So all you can say is wheelchair accessible walk, Bronte, if that's where it is, or wheelchair accessible walk, Tinbabilla National Park. That's all we need to know to use Google to fill in the blanks. And this is very user-friendly on a mobile phone, on a smartphone. And I'm constantly just, I find a new venue and I'm like, okay, I need to remember, I'm just trying to think, one of the ones, really random one, St. Patrick's Cathedral in Melbourne. Not that I'm a big churchgoer, but my sister took us to go see the cathedral, and it was very accessible. And I was like, oh, okay, people might want to know that. So I went on my mobile phone, or the Melbourne Museum, where there's a Jurassic Park. So there we are, just going through the streets, and as we're walking along, or I'm rolling along, I'm just going on my phone. You're not supposed to text and walk. Well, I've got an excuse, I'm not walking. Anyway, right, so, but if you are a business, you can fill in as much as you can. So the more information you provide, the easier it is for us on the back end to populate that listing. But yeah, as I mentioned, we do ask for your email address. That is not to be published. That is just so that we can ask questions if we have any. Okay. So in terms of reviewing a listing, like Jordan with Higher Up, it's very important that we know who's contributing. And so just like we ask for an email when you're nominating a listing, we also want to know that you're a member of the community when you post a review. And again, those details are not published online. It is just so we know. So remember, there's the Become a Member tab up here. And if you want to review something, if you're at a listing and you go down to post a comment review, it says you must be a member. If you click the Become a Member here or here, you can log in. When you're logged in, you'll see, it'll say welcome and your name. And the same listing, it will allow you to type a comment. And again, we see that on the back end. As long as it looks reasonable, we'll publish it straight away. Okay. Right, so that's enough about Getaboutable. So the next is how NDIS can help. It's the catchphrase that NDIS will provide reasonable and necessary supports towards achieving goals and aspirations. those are actually very important words when it comes to not the routine everyday experience. So say you want to go on a trip. Will the NDIS help you? Well, they'll help you with the sports. They won't pay for your airfares. It's still a question as to whether they would pay for the airfare of a support worker that you're bringing with you. Or do you pay them 24-hour salary, 24-hour worth of, whatever the, service cost is, and that covers their airfare. I don't know how the NDIS feels, but it's all about... Exactly. I agree with that one. The point is, somebody told me once, the NDIS loves a good story. If you can justify it, if you can say that this is reasonable and necessary to achieve my goal of going on a family holiday or visiting my sister in Melbourne. I mean, a year ago, those stories that we've heard of, oh, it's never been done before, the NDIS does that too. I wanted to have a ramp, a portable ramp that I could take, have it based at my sister's house, so I didn't have to fly it up and down between Canberra and Melbourne all the time. Have it based at my sister's house, but be able to use it at family and friends all around Melbourne. And at first they were like, oh, no, we won't do that. It's like, but you will rent me a ramp every time I go down there. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Is it cheaper to buy a $250 ramp or rent me one every time I go there? And then I got it approved. So you've got to be an advocate. You've got to be forthright about what you want and what's reasonable, and paint that story about the comparison. So your goal can be as simple as have a holiday or visit family and friends or just travel or just explore my local community. And in my case, it's to live independently as normally as possible. And I put all of those things in that category. And then it's all the other issues to consider. Are you self-managing? If you are not self-managing, you have to use NDIS providers, which, if it's not in your local community, you might not know them. Whereas if you're self-managing, you have flexibility. And I've actually used NDIS funding to assist my travel to Japan. So, and the NDIS were very forward about accepting that, more forward than they were about buying the ramp to stay at my sister's house. But anyway, so yeah, because I was going to be hiring equipment. So they were very comfortable about me hiring equipment in Japan. But I had to be self-managing to be able to do that. What types of supports do you need? Do you need assistance with daily living? If so, that's a very flexible support in your plan. I don't know how many here are actually already on plans, but there's different categories and some are more prescriptive than others. Equipment is very prescriptive, and I've always come into trouble on the equipment side. So if you can plan ahead, and if you do need equipment, even if it's rental equipment, get it put in your plan. Or say, we'd like to take a family holiday in the next year. We don't know exactly what we'll need. It depends on where we go. But can we have, X dollars, because we think that's reasonable. And, very often it will become a negotiation, and a true negotiation. It's been my experience, but you need to say, we're going to want to do this, and here's what we're going to need for it. And then who can provide and where can you find the supports? And this is very much where Hire came in, and I'm very glad that you told that story about the family from the Northern Territory, because otherwise I was going to tell it here. I talked about your existing support workers. If you have a very good relationship and the nature of the disability is that you would prefer to take your support worker, that is reasonable and necessary, okay? But how do you make that happen? That is an extra cost. So I'd love to hear from anybody who manages to get a support worker with them on the trip paid for. I think that's what should happen, but I really don't know what will happen.
Let me give you a little story.
Yeah, please.
for the National Folk Festival, I got someone a ticket as a companion, because you can get companion tickets.
Yes.
And so that gave me a few hours every day, basically,
Yeah.
negotiating.
Yeah. And that's a fantastic story. And I know Qantas have, was that a companion ticket on the Qantas?
No,
Yeah.
no,
It was a train
National
ticket?
Folk Festival, isn't it?
Oh, that was for the attendance. Yeah, but then you've got to think about the transport. So I know that, so companion tickets definitely, but in terms of transport and airfares and train tickets and all that, I know New South Wales Rail have $1 companion fares.
Yeah.
I know Qantas have special cards you can get if you need a companion. So, but all of this takes organizing, which, so support services at your destination, companies like HireUp, go online, find your support services and organize it ahead of time. Which brings me to my last issue to consider, plan. I can't, one of the biggest frustrations traveling with accessibility needs is the lack of spontaneity. But the more you plan, the more you can be spontaneous at your destination. And being adaptable, things don't go right all the time. But being adaptable, and most of us are quite good at doing adaptations when needed. And of course, in the spirit of this conference, dare to imagine more.
That's great.
Okay. Thank you.